वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनातीरा वनचारी यमुनातीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधवा कुञ्ज बिहारी गोपी जनवल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यशोदानन्दना व्रजजनरञ्जना यमुनातीरा वनचारी यमुनातीरा वनचारी हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे राम हरे राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय जगन्नाथ बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शना जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेवा जय सुभद्रा जय सुदर्शना जय गौरांगी बेंगलोरीश्वर गौरांगी गौरांगी जय निताय चैतन्य जय निताय चैतन्य निताय चैतन्य जय निताय चैतन्य जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय अनंत देव प्रहलाद नरसिंह जय अनंत देव जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद। जय वो विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद् अभय चरणार अरविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजाकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदश्री श्रीमद् भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरदास ठाकुर की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्त वृंद की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की जय। ब्रजभूमि श्री वृंदावन धाम की जय। मायापुर श्री नवद्वीप धाम की जय। मथुरा धाम की जय। द्वारका धाम की जय। जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। गंगा माई की जय। यमुना माई की जय। भक्ति देवी की जय। तुलसी महारानी की जय। संभवेत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। गौरभक्त प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Hari Om Tat Sat. So Hare Krishna devotees, welcome for today morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. This is a summarization of a full chapter may be broken into 2 or 3 parts. Today we are doing the 4th canto, 29th chapter, and I have been asked to take up from verse number 61 to I think 81 or 82, something like that. So this is the 3rd section of this particular chapter, a very long chapter and a wonderful chapter at that. This is a discussion between Narada Muni and King Prachina Barhi. Of course, we are hearing this discussion between Narada Muni and King Prachina Barhi as a discussion between Vidhura and Maitreya, and this whole thing has been narrated, as a discussion between King Parikshit and Sukadeva Goswami, and of course another place Suta Goswami and the Rishis. So this particular chapter is Prachina Bari is a great king, and is a very rich, a very pious king, and has been performing all the ritualistic activities, or what has been prescribed in the Vedas, has been performing the Karma Kanda activities very nicely, so to say, and Narada Muni takes mercy on him and decides to actually take him to the platform of liberation. So Narada Muni, we all know, is the most powerful personality in terms of giving the jiva, the knowledge of self-realization, and literally when someone becomes Narada Muni's disciple, he goes back to Godhead. There's such great personalities that he has liberated. We know about Dhruva Maharaj, we know about Prahalad. Like this, whomever Narada Muni touches, they are back to Godhead. They go back to Godhead. So here, this Prachina Barhi gets this opportunity to take up spiritual knowledge from Narada Muni, and he's getting this knowledge from him. And Narada Muni is the most dynamic preacher in the entire universe. He really knows whom to preach how. So right from looking at, this is a king, there was a hunter, right? We all know the story, who was completely ignorant. Forget about any spiritual understanding, any material understanding also he didn't have. He was a very, very, very basic core, a very basic human being, like at the level of simply killing animals, that to half killing animals, that kind of thing. But such a person, he actually, who couldn't even chant the name of Rama. So he gave him a different way in which he can chant, and that chanting in continuously when you do, you automatically say the name of the Lord like that. That level of dynamism. So he told him he can't chant Rama like that, and he said you chant Mara, because I don't know what that. Maybe he's more used to that thing. So he said Mara. So he continuously you keep chanting Mara, 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 Mara. Then it turned out to be Rama, 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 Rama. And then of course that ability, that it's it's not simply that okay, someone has good vocabulary, or someone has the good way of explaining things. It is not that we in material world so many people have. If you go to the corporate world, people can speak for hours and mesmerizingly speak all that, but that does not make any spiritual awakening in anybody. That comes from the purity of the speaker. So Narada Muni is such a great personality that when he speaks, the jivas automatically gets spiritually awakened. Our Srila Prabhupada is an example in that sense. Prabhupada, in a very short span of time, circled the world so many times, and of course, he did not even sleep. He was focused only on preaching. But it's not simply preaching, right? He was instructing people how to, the way of living. It's not simply about giving classes, right? How do you be Krishna conscious generally through the day, and building temples, and writing books, teaching people how to preach. There is no limit to which what Prabhupada has done in that short span of time. But more importantly, through all of that, he was not heckled by time. He was not heckled by the ignorance of people. But he was able to make them all pure devotees. We are seeing today Prabhupada's disciples. Everyone is an amazing gem. You just see them so bright. Someone went to Chennai and had darshan of my spiritual master, his soul is Jayapataka Swami Guru Maharaj. And they came, and first thing they said was, he was looking so bright. Suddenly when we saw that's a star setting like that. So their awakening is so much that they all, what do you call, shine, out of their knowledge, so much bliss. So this is Prabhupada's, following in the footsteps of Narada Muni. And of course, so now we will continue this discussion on Narada Muni. So someone has written that Mara actually means to die in Marathi. Thank you for sharing that, Grishma Padye Mataji. So thank you very much. So Mara means to die. So this gentleman, this hunter, he knew nothing but killing, right? So die. So he was more accustomed to thinking of these words, and Narada Muni converted that such a negative word into such the most positive word in the universe for that hunter. So we all know whom we are talking about, Valmiki Muni. So like that, now here he is actually giving this realization to Prachina Barhi. So now in this section of our discussions, we will see certain aspects. I will come to that. Let me first, as usual, I will read only the first stanza. The first sloka in Sanskrit, the translation, and then we will discuss all the other slokas. I will read the translation alone and we will discuss. Shayanam imam utsrijya swasantam purusho yata karmatmani ahitam bhumte tadrishe ne tarane va. Word by word meaning. Shayanam, lying down on a bed. Imam, this body. Utsrijya, after giving up. Swashantam, breathing. Purushaha, the living entity. Yata, as karma, activity. Atmani, in the mind. Ahitam, executed. Bhumte, enjoys. Tadrishena, by a similar body. Itarena, by a different body. Va, are. Translation. The living entity, while dreaming, gives up the actual living body. Through the activities of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or a dog. After giving up this gross body, the living entity enters either an animal body or a demigod's body on this planet or on another planet. He thus enjoys the results of the actions of his past life. So, this is the translation of this particular verse. So, in this section, as I was trying to say before, now earlier he was giving the story of a imaginary character, which is basically a reflection of this Prachina Bhari only, but he was saying it in such a way that it does not directly indicate to the person he is speaking to. Sometimes, when we do some mistakes, when people directly tell us, it may hurt us, and particularly people with a lot of ego, it's very difficult for them to digest. So Narada Muni here, that's what I was talking about, the dynamism of Narada Muni. He did not directly talk to him, hey, what are you doing? This is all nonsense you are doing, you don't get into all this now, directly come to devotional service. He didn't tell him like that. But he wanted to give that message. In fact, one of the verses before, earlier there, it is saying, this Prachina Bhari actually says, oh Narada Muni, whoever taught me, they did not teach me about spirituality the way you have indicated what actually is spirituality. So they have been teaching him the karma kanda in the name of spirituality. So he is saying now, somehow they did not teach me this way. So somehow he did not get it this way, and he has been following, whoever has been his teacher has been following it sincerely. Now you go and tell him, boss, all this is nonsense, you get out of this thing, he will feel very hurt. So he actually told him of a story of a different imaginary character who did something like what Prachina Bhari was doing. And when you are telling it as our own thing, our own what we are doing, as though someone else is doing, we see, oh, this does not make sense. Actually, no, this is only this one I am telling. That's why he comes to that. And then he tells that this is an imaginary story. And he says, I can't understand all these things. Then he explains, when I said this one, this character is actually this mind, this character is like that, he is explaining everything. And then this Prachina Bhari is coming to understand that. In that flow of things, we are coming to this 11th verse where Narada Muni is saying, the living entity while dreaming gives up the actual living body. Through the activity of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or a dog. After giving up this gross body, the living entity enters either an animal body or a demigod's body on this planet or on another planet. He thus enjoys the results of the actions of his past life. So, this verse again, if you read it in isolation, you may interpret it differently. So we need to go to the previous verse, just the translation I will read, then we can move into this verse. The great sage Narada continued, the living entity acts in a gross body in this life. This body is forced to act by the subtle body, composed of mind, intelligence and ego. After the gross body is lost, the subtle body is still there to enjoy or suffer. Thus, there is no change. So, this point is about the two aspects of the body. One is the subtle body and the gross body. Subtle body consists of mind, intelligence and ego, and the gross body consists of all the various senses made of the 5 elements, which are gross, which we can physically see, touch. While the subtle one, we can only experience, we cannot feel or we cannot touch. I don't know if we can say feel, but feel is more, so we can experience that subtle body sometimes. In our normal sense, we can certainly experience it. But when that subtle body is not having a body, we can sometimes experience, I don't know if we can feel, maybe we can feel, but we cannot touch. So that portion we will see in the next verse. So here, description of the subtle body and the gross body is given, and then how these two are different and what is important is what we are going to discuss from 61 onwards. It's very nice description for us to understand these two separately. So he is saying here, the living entity while dreaming gives up the actual living body. Through the activity of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body, either as a god or as a dog. After giving up this gross body, the living entity either enters an animal body or a demigod body, or this planet, on this planet or on another planet. He thus enjoys the results of the actions of his past life. That means this gross body, while living in this body itself, forget about after the body is dead. Even while the gross body is living, is inside a living being. And of course, here if you see the word, through the activities of his mind and intelligence. So there are the third element which is being brought out, through the activity of his mind. Whose mind? So this mind, intelligence and false ego we understood as subtle body. Then we are talking about his as belonging to this, who's actually owning this mind, intelligence and the false ego. So who's that? That is the soul. So there are three components: the soul. Then the soul is first layer of binding is with the subtle body. Then the second layer of binding is with the gross body. So now that soul can actually, while being inside the body, gross body, he can still use this subtle body and he can be away from this where he is currently physically situated with this gross body. That is the point that is being made. Through the activity of his mind and intelligence, he acts in another body either as God or dog. Sometimes we dream, right? And he's written, the living entity while dreaming, it is written. So many a times we dream and we can go to suddenly be in a different state of, sometimes we think ourselves as a king. Sometimes we are chased by a tiger maybe in a human body or maybe in another body. Sometimes we feel, I don't know how many would have felt themselves like a devata, maybe you are flying somewhere like that. It's possible. So when we think all these things, soul, with the help of the gross body, with the help of the subtle body, while the gross body is resting or sleeping or whatever it is, it goes out of this body and experiences certain things. So now the point therefore is, so what is more important, the gross body or the subtle body? Now that comes into play. So it's all a question of how you see this, but you have to understand there is a layer here. Without the subtle body, the gross body cannot act. So for example, the gross body actually is only an instrument in that sense. Basically, the subtle body, the mind and intelligence says, I want to eat this, or this is so nice, I want to eat. Then immediately the gross body, the hand is actually activated, that it takes that whatever that stuff is and puts it into the mouth. So the gross body is actually activating the subtle body is actually activating the gross body. Therefore, can we say, can the subtle body exist without the gross body? Yes, that we have seen that it can exist without the gross body in the dream. That was explained here, that the subtle body can go out. Of course, subtle body in itself is nothing. It has got the jiva inside, the soul inside. The soul is being encompassed inside this subtle body and it is able to go out of this gross body. But it needs the help of the gross body. That we need to understand. Here there's also a description of what about ghosts. The ghosts are nothing but subtle body. That means that jiva is actually has lost his physical gross body, but that soul has, that gross body has not got another body. Therefore, it is not able to act, it is not able to physically do things because it does not have the instrument of the gross body. So that is the difference. So the ghosts, sometimes people can feel that I feel there is something here, some supernatural thing is here, I'm uncomfortable. The people say that. And there are times, maybe, when the gross body is able to act without the subtle body is able to act without the gross body. And that is when you can sometimes feel, some tables moving, chairs moving and all these things happen. And Prabhupada writes about it. When a gross body is able to do that, that is actually identified as a ghost. Because there are actually souls everywhere. We can see so many souls out here. We don't call everything as a ghost. But when a gross subtle body is able to act without a gross body, then that is defined as a ghost. So Prabhupada usually sometimes, when he's walking around, he will, like he was walking near a well or somewhere, he will just tap his stick walking. He has a walking stick, and he will tap it at the stick, and then it will go. Then people are, why? Say there's a ghost there. Prabhupada is such a transcendental person. People, he can, and there is some, it's not there in Lilamrita, I think, but I don't remember reading that in Lilamrita, but I have seen there is one Prabhupada serial which came. I think one of Prabhupada disciples did a serial, TV serial. So there once Prabhupada has bought a house when he was in the Grahastha state. That house was actually was haunted. That is what the people were saying. So nobody was buying that house. Prabhupada bought that house. And he was inside that house, late evening, he was, after night, sometime he was writing something. And this ghost was disturbing him. And actually he, in that mode, he did not want to be disturbed. He actually liberated that ghost. That scene came in one of those serials like that. One of the episodes of the serial Prabhupada. So Prabhupada is we don't understand Prabhupada. We sometimes think, okay, Prabhupada, maybe he lived some 50 years before me. When I was born, Prabhupada was there on this planet. So maybe I was a 1 or 2 year old child kind of a thing. So Prabhupada was there, and we take it for granted. Oh, Prabhupada is an ordinary man. He was there 10 years before or 15 years before, like that. But he is very transcendental. So he is explaining. So whatever he is writing here, this is Prabhupada's word. So we understand that this actually means what it is. And Prabhupada is in all of these sections, whatever we are reading, Prabhupada is actually talking about relating this back to spiritual knowledge. How do we, therefore, the subtle body. So he is saying actual liberation means liberating from our subtle body, not from the gross body. So that means when I am dying, they say, no, you don't die, only your body dies. What body dies at the point of our current death? Actually, we see the gross body made of the 5 elements lying down there. Then we say the soul has no death, right? Even the subtle body, in a way, does not die at that time. So the gross body is gone. That is gone, and it's lying down there. It is now dead matter. Even if you touch it, you pinch it, nothing. It does not have any effect. But the subtle body, which is still encompassing the soul, is actually out of that gross body. But that subtle body is actually not dead. And in fact, it is not dead till we are here in this material world. So, we need to understand that the body includes subtle and gross body. And in that sense, we are eternally there as long as we are in this material world. That subtle body continues to be with us. So the subtle body, when we get a gross body, that subtle body carries our impressions from the previous gross body. That we need to understand. And it is also mentioned the subtle body also loses memory of the past body. Some memories are retained, not everything is there, but there are some memories, but majority memory is lost. So there are examples given here when the memory is lost for the gross body, that we will see in the future verses. So the idea is we need to get liberated from this gross body, and the process Prabhupada here is quoting about 2 verses, Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam, and he is also talking about Manmana Bhava Madbhakto. So since this is not, here most of almost everyone is a devotee, I am not getting into these details because we have to complete 20-25 verses. So basically Prabhupada is trying to bring us how we revive the memory of the subtle body of the actual soul which is inside, and get liberation from the subtle body also. So that is important. Therefore, Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam is try to remember about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, and that will give us this liberation. Naiti mameti so Arjuna, Tektva deham punarjanma, Naiti mameti so Arjuna. That means once we leave this body, including the subtle body, we don't come back. That is what here Prabhupada is trying to stress on. And how can we do that? Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishasya yuktaivam atmanam matparayanaha. Always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your obeisance, homage unto me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So this is the formula of how we can get liberation from this subtle body. Let's see the next verse. The living entity labors under the bodily conception of I am this, I am that, my duty is this, and therefore I shall do it. These are all mental impressions, and all these activities are temporary. Nonetheless, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the living entity gets a chance to execute all his mental concoction, thus he gets another body. Therefore, this gross body is gone. The person is so-called dead, but the subtle body actually continues to be having all these thoughts in the mind. Oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I want to do this. And as I said, if we don't get the mercy of the Lord in the terms of a gift of a new body, we continue to lament as a ghost. So the Lord is so merciful that he says, okay, you still have not come to that understanding that you are not this this gross body or subtle body. You are an Atma and you are connected to me eternally. Okay, till you come to that point, I will continue to gift you with new bodies with which you can experience your desires. So the Lord is so merciful, and therefore he gives us this opportunity to execute all his mental concoctions. It is written, right? So the mental concoction is this subtle body. The soul, with the help of the subtle body, is thinking, I want to do this, I am this, I want to execute that, I want to do this, I want to achieve this. So this is all mental concoction, because this is an illusory world in that sense, right? It's an illusory world, meaning these have no real purpose. We can say my purpose, is to achieve this, to achieve that. But you think about it, we are all minute specks in this entire universe. Sometimes, we think, ours is the most important thing in the entire universe. But you travel somewhere further along, and let's say you travel thousands and thousands of miles away from your place. You go to another place, there also you see there are many people thinking this is the only thing that I need to do, and for them that house, that city, that whatever, and that particular shop in which they go and buy certain things, these things are so real for them. For you, you have not even seen these shops, you have not even seen these places, but they are all so much glued to it. When you go and see that shop or something, you don't even get an impression, or something like our attachment to where we live. We are so much vivid with everything around us, but we think this is our only world. But if you go and see, there are millions and trillions of people having similar impressions and doing their stuff, but none of that really matter. I die and I move on, then I get attachment to another house, another thing. So this is, so that way, including whatever our achievements, which we, this is not leave the house and things like that. There are people who are working for the upliftment of mankind, they are inventing things and stuff like that. So people think those are important things, but don't water it down and don't simply talk about it. It's all a waste of time. But ultimately, if you really see, in this cosmic world, in this cosmic manifestation, whatever is our findings, whatever is our knowledge that we gather through this material senses, beyond a point, is nothing. This is just a small, this entire earth for that matter is considered like a mustard seed. When you compare it into with the other planetary systems across the universe, how does it matter? Some mustard seed is lost also, right? If you are when you are having cooking, sometimes from your hand some few mustard seeds slip and fall off. You really care about that mustard seed. So whatever you do in this planet which is the greatest thing, beyond a point it is still nothing great. Of course, I am not belittling our position in this material world, because material world is also an energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So unlike the Mayavad, we don't say, oh, this material existence is useless, it is of no use. No, nothing like that. It is actually an energy of the Lord, and therefore we really appreciate and all that. But when you have to come to this point of completely spiritual understanding, we also need to understand that yes, it is there for a purpose, for realization, but our idea is not therefore to simply be trying to experience this material world in its, because there's no end to this. So we need to appreciate that yes, it is important, it is there, but it is a vehicle for people to reform and go back. Like how we say there are so many reformatory places, just like a jail is there. Like that, there are so many places where we transform ourselves. So they are important. If that place is not there, maybe we don't get the transformation. So it's important. But beyond the point, once we are out of it, we should not be thinking, oh, that place is the most important place in the universe. No, but there is something we have to move on in life. That is important. The next verse. One can understand the mental or conscious position of a living entity by the activities of two kinds of senses, the knowledge acquiring senses and the executing senses. Similarly, by the mental condition or consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. So one, in this gross body, when we are living there, we are trying to acquire knowledge through this knowledge acquiring senses, and also through using the senses to, some of the senses to execute what we are learning. Right from the child is born, he is learning, he is looking at things, then he is touching, he is feeling. Through this every activity he is learning something. That knowledge is there, and that is happening through the gross body, through the knowledge acquiring senses. Similarly, by the mental condition or consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. So how do we therefore understand? Okay, I said no, memory is lost for the subtle body, which is not dead in that sense when the gross body is dead. He loses his memory. But how do you get this knowledge? So that is being discussed here. It says similarly, by the mental condition or consciousness of a person, one can understand his position in the previous life. So it says, no, there is an English proverb that says, the face is the index of the mind. So if one is angry, his anger is immediately expressed in the face. Similarly, other mental states are reflected by the actions of the gross body. In other words, the activities of the gross body are reactions of the mental condition. So, whatever mental conditions happen to us, that is reflected in the gross body. So, you extend that little further. This is little philosophy, little thing. So, please bear with me. Extend this little further. Now, I am getting angry. That is seen in my face. That means what my subtle body is thinking, it is actually expressed through this gross body. So now extend this beyond this body. When I die and get another body, what is that body? Now, what are the properties of that body? I am getting to that state now. So, okay, I look like this now. What will I look like in the future? I mean, once this gross body dies, how will I look at? It will look like what is your mind and intelligence thinking and focusing on, right? Because this gross body, like now, I am expressing, let's say, anger. When my body face becomes like this, which means the face is a reflection of what is my mind. Therefore, the next body is a reflection of what my mind is thinking. So that logic so very nicely explained by Prabhupada. That if I am looking like a dog, the gross body, then my mind is actually thinking in terms of a dog. I mean, the activities or the consciousness is like the dog. Because of that, the body is reflecting the dog's body. You understand? So, therefore, that sense of what I am today is based on what I have been imagining or what is my expression. My means the soul's expression through to the subtle body. That expression is this body. So it says those who are evolved can actually understand what they were previously. So if you understand this science and go deeper into this, then I understand, like just like I'm showing this anger, this is reflecting. So this body now is a reflection of what thought of my previously. What all it is going through is because of the impressions that consciousness had in probably the previous body or the previous body, we don't know. Everything is getting executed in the form of this gross body. Therefore, our idea is to keep refining our subtle body, that means the mind, intelligence and false ego, accordingly to be continuing to live in this material body but get higher, better bodies. If you keep refining it positively, you will get better and better and better bodies. So we keep on progressing from animal body to human body to possibly a devata body. But again, when the consciousness is degraded, we are again demoted back into, the stool in the worm. Prabhupada writes sometimes a stool in the worm. How badly the consciousness becomes, then we become stool in the worm. So yesterday I was reading for Karthik Vrita's this one. There it is mentioned, a woman, actually that's one Brahmana woman, I'm not getting into the story, but actually it is mentioned that she is eating from the pot in which she cooked. So we can see this is normal these days. People cook, keep that same vessel and start eating from that directly. So there that lady did like that. And then, when she left this body, it is mentioned, because of that particular act, she had to take birth as a cat, which eats its own cub. No, normally it is mentioned that when the cat actually gives birth, it will have, unlike humans, it will have many 4, 5, 6 cubs which will be falling, and she will be so hungry that she does not even know what she is doing. She will eat away one of its own child, whatever is born. It is like that. This is a material world. It happens. Now that one was given them. I mean, it's very difficult for us to comprehend. If you eat out of your vessel in which you cooked, then you may become a cat, and then you may have to eat your own baby. Very difficult and very dangerous. That is why the scripturals, whatever is there, we need to follow. Of course, it's very difficult today in our consciousness with our surrounding environment. It is very difficult for people. That is why, at least, let us come to this platform because it's very, very difficult to follow the script, the Vedic injunction for every material activity that we do. For everything, there is a sloka you need to chant, right? You sneeze, you need to chant. If you breathe, you need to chant. There is something, chant means some mantra which will neutralize the activity, neutralize the effect of the activity I did. I breathed in now and I have killed so many germs. So I need to do some prayaschitta for that. So there is no end to this. And we don't have either the life, the knowledge or anything. Therefore, it is said you simply chant the holy name of the Lord, and the prescribed method is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. The idea is what? The idea is to bring that change in the consciousness of the subtle body. Here the focus is on the subtle body. Bring the change in the consciousness of the subtle body. Here it says, see, it doesn't matter. The gross body is simply an instrument. Don't worry too much about the gross body. Worry about the subtle body. Because that is what is continuing to be with you till you leave this material world. So that is a permanent companion. Just like we say, the Paramatma is sitting with us all the time. The subtle body is always there all the time, how many ever bodies I take. And finally, when I go back to the spiritual world, that time I have read, we take a dip in the Viraja river. That is the border between this material world and spiritual world. We take a dip, and when that soul comes out, that subtle body is lost. Then the soul comes out in its pure, original spiritual body. Up to that point in time, the gross body continues and it carries all the impressions of the previous bodies, and we will see how all it sometimes affects in the going forward verses. I know I am already much beyond, I have only done 4-5 verses. But this is the foundation. Once we know this, then we can keep going faster into the other things. Sometimes we suddenly experience something that was never experienced in the present body by sight or hearing. Sometimes we see such things suddenly in dreams. So how do we understand this? That is what I was alluding to in the last sentence which I spoke. So I see something or I experience something in my dream, but I have never seen that in my life. Then how did that thing come into my head? That is important. Suddenly I feel like, suddenly one day I feel like I am chased by a tiger, or I am falling off from a cliff. I have never experienced that in my life, this life. But how did that thing come into my life? So this is said, this memory, because the subtle body is a storehouse of so much memories, it has been mentioned. Just imagine how many millions of years I have been around. When I say this soul, which is encompassed by this subtle body, and through different millions and millions of gross bodies I have gone through. And this subtle body has got all the memories, impressions within it. Of course, it keeps forgetting. That's a different story. But it is a storehouse. So like how we say, like if you take a computer or some laptop or your phone, there is a memory inside that. Now, when you are using a particular app, it is focusing on that particular area of that app. That doesn't mean there are various other apps and all the data related to the apps is also inside that memory. At this point in time, you are not accessing those apps, but they are there. It is sort of, if you want to pull it up, it can be pulled up, but in more, this is a body is a even more, refined computer, in the sense that there is a controller who makes a switch for even giving, not able to access that portion of it, but it is still there. But what happens, it is said that it's a memory of such a huge ocean of knowledge. Sometimes from the ocean you see some bubbles coming out from underneath, under the surface, and it bubbles and comes to the surface, to the top. Like that, some memories sometimes are allowed to come out, and that memory is what we are experiencing, seeing a particular object which we have never seen in this particular life. That is mentioned very nicely, which means, and it is a combination, I don't know if it is in this verse or in the next verse, where it is saying it's actually a combination of various things you see. So let me see the next verse. We will see this verse. Therefore, my dear king, the living entity who has a subtle mental covering develops all kinds of thoughts and images because of his previous body. Take this from me as certain. There is no possibility of concocting anything mentally without having perceived it in the previous body. So this is very important. There is no possibility of concocting anything mentally without having perceived it in the previous body. So what does this mean? That means that my thinking that I am falling off from a cliff, I use this example. Now, I cannot simply concoct it without having that experience or without having seen that, if not in this body, elsewhere. And it is also mentioned, these images I saw necessarily need not that for example, I may not have fallen from that hill. It's not just that I have to fall from the hill to feel in my dream that I am actually falling into that. It could be that I have seen a hill, I have seen someone else falling. My mind actually combines these two images and makes me feel I am the one who is falling. So this is written here in this thing, it has been explained. So I have seen these two different images, just like today AI, right? They are doing this. You have a picture, and there are like nice temple structure is there, and when you took the picture and you realize some two cycle walas were coming in front of that temple, and you don't want the temple, the cycle there, So today they click that cycle and then press one more button, that cycle vanishes. Then you only see the picture. So like this, the memory, here what is happening is you can take that cycle and place it in another place where another photo where you want that, if it will be nice if I have a cycle there, okay, here you put that cycle from here to there. So it is not that that cycle is existing in that scene where that photo of that person was taken, but you came and mixed two pictures there. The same way, I have seen a hill, I have seen someone falling. Now my mind can actually combine both these images, permutation and combination. It can make me think. But unless I have seen a mountain and unless I have seen someone falling, I cannot have this experience, because it is saying you cannot concoct something like that unless you have a knowledge of those two items. And that has been there in the ocean of my memory, millions and trillions of my years of my journey in different bodies. Just imagine, this is like huge. And it is also mentioned, then how does it lose its memory? How does that, where is that switch which makes you lose the memory? So the Lord has created a few circumstances when which the memory is lost during that period like that. So he says, when one is actually sleeping, that we can experience. When I am sleeping, I am not conscious of this body, clearly, right? If someone touches me, I don't know. But unless I am woken out of that by the touch, they just keep shaking me and then I wake up. But the initial touch or whatever, I don't realize this. This is very basic example all of us can realize. When you are under the effect of some anesthesia like chloroform or something like that. Prabhupada writes all these things in these verses. That time also, it is arrested. He is saying that the subtle body gets sort of arrested. At the time of death, also that subtle body is arrested. Then when we are under shock, so many a times now when people are in deep shock, they don't realize what is happening around them, right? Now we can experience this. Someone suddenly loses some very dear one. They are in a wave of shock, then they are like simply a dead matter. Their face is so blunt. That means they are in that shock. Because of that shock, they are not able to realize the environment around them. Then there is also the situation when your body temperature reaches about 107. Actually, it is also mentioned, somewhere else I have read this, in one of Prabhupada's writing. At the time of death, the body temperature rises, I believe. And just before the person leaves there, its temperature reaches to 107. Here also he is talked about this 107 degrees. So when the body reaches 107 degrees centigrade, Fahrenheit, I think. So 107, that time the subtle body actually loses this memory. So it is actually material, right? That's why we don't carry it into the spiritual world. That is very very subtle software, right? That is why it's also material. Don't think that is spiritual. Only the soul inside is spiritual, but it is encompassed with something which is subtle, and therefore we are not able to decode it, but it is still material. So Prabhupada uses this word. It is a stockpile. This subtle body is a stockpile of all kinds of material desires. So it is the stockpile, it contains all the memory, and it is also generating all our desires. So actually our real liberation is getting out of the subtle body. And again, how do we get out of it? Prabhupada again and again in every purport is trying to make us remember, therefore it is very difficult to get out of the subtle body, of course the gross body and the subtle body. Therefore the only way is to actually come to this point of one who engages in the transcendental service of the Lord in body, mind and words is to be considered liberated in all conditions of material existence. Therefore, even in our material condition, if we are able to come to this point of thinking of the Lord, acting for the Lord, using our mind, senses, everything for the Lord, then even in this body, including that subtle body, we can still be liberated. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.187. That was quoted by Srila Prabhupada. So he is saying, the Krishna consciousness movement is based on this principle. We must teach people to absorb themselves always in the service of the Lord, because That position is their natural position. One who is always serving the Lord is to be considered already liberated. So Prabhupada is quoting a Bhagavad Gita to make that point. Next verse. O king, all good fortune unto you. The mind is the cause of the living entities attaining a certain type of body in accordance with its association with material nature. According to one's mental composition, one can understand what the living entity was in his past life as well as what kind of body he will have in the future. Thus, the mind indicates the past and future bodies. Therefore, one who is very intelligent, in assimilating the spiritual knowledge, he can actually say what he will become in the next life. So, sometimes some people say, right, some people just give, tell lies. Some so-called yogis, they say, oh, you are in the last body. Many people say, oh, he told me about my last body. How do you know he really knew what is your last body? He is simply lying. But there are people who can tell you, like, your past life, you did this and that is why you have become like this. You need to do this, they tell you. So we need to understand what is genuine and what is not, because nobody can prove that, right? So I can tell you, I am a great person, I can see your past, I can also see your future. Many people fall for such, such Prabhupada will use different words, I cannot use. But such cheaters, right? They teach sometimes in the name of astrology, sometimes in the name of, I am a spiritually elevated person, I know, like that they say. But really a spiritually elevated person can see. So we can see that, Prabhupada used to, when he sees someone, he can tell what is going on in their mind. He will say, one devotee wanted to, he says, something going on in his head, he wanted to take a break and go away. So he goes there. He's been thinking, he practices how to go and tell Prabhupada, I want to leave the ashram and go away, Prabhupada. So he practices, he finally gets courageous, comes in front of Prabhupada and sits there. And as soon as he sits, Prabhupada said, so you want to go? Prabhupada first directly asks him that question. He was shocked. How did Prabhupada know? Then Prabhupada explains why he should not go. So, I'm just giving one example. There are many such things. We can even see in our spiritual masters, right? Like my spiritual master Jayapatak Maharaj, he just looks at you like that. When you feel so naked, right? He just sees through completely what you are, everything. I have had experiences of some devotees. Actually, Kripa Maya told me once, a long time back, that he told at that his time of initiation, himself and a few more devotees, he told them about what were their past, like that. So there are, even today, we don't have to go elsewhere. In our own line, Prabhupada's line, we have very realized personalities. They can see through everything. Sometimes when people, I'm not simply only talking about His Holiness Jayapatak Maharaj, but there are many Prabhupada disciples who are capable of such things. They don't exhibit these things openly, but it is there. That why I am saying this point here is, if you are spiritually awakened, you can actually understand what was your past. You can see someone else's past, and we can also say by their current activity what their future will be. This is not spiritual. This is an understanding of the science of how these material things happen, how the gross body, how the subtle body, how the composition. So we are now learning theoretically. Now when you apply it practically, you can actually come to that thing. Yes, this is why you did, and therefore this is what is happening to you. It's in one sense it's not rocket science, but it is subtle science. One should be spiritually intelligent to be able to understand this. And we also know this, right? Because of this consciousness, urdhvam gacchanti sattvastha madhye tishtani rajasaka jaganya guna vrittistha ado gacchanti tamasaha. So this translation of this particular verse is urdhvam gacchanti sattvastha. So one who is in good consciousness, generally in the gentle consciousness, he keeps elevating. He goes towards the higher planetary system, so up to the point of Devata. Madhye tishtanti rajasaha. Those who are passionate continues to remain in the middle planetary systems. And adho gacchati tamasaha. The one who is in the ignorance, his consciousness is taking him down. So our purpose should be all three. Again, remember, either this sattvastha or what do you call rajasaha or tamasaha. These are material qualities. But still, for spiritual understanding and for favorable environment, one needs to be remaining in the sattvastha. That means then you can elevate. Of course, our idea is not to elevate to higher planetary system. But when you are situated in the mode of goodness, you are more favorably able to take up devotional life. So that is important. Then we'll go to the next verse. Sometimes in a dream, we see something never experienced or heard of in this life. But all these incidents have been experienced at different times, in different places and in different conditions. We discussed this. We have experienced it, we have seen it, and we combine some of these images. And sometimes it concocts that way. But it is within our realm of experience in different bodies. That we need to understand. See, he is giving an example. According to time and circumstances, they combine so that in dreams we see something wonderful that we have never experienced. For instance, we may see an ocean on the peak of a mountain, or we may see that the ocean has dried up. So these are combinations of different experiences in time and space. That means, how can there be an ocean in the peak of a mountain? So I have seen ocean, I have seen a mountain, I have seen, of course, a peak of a mountain. My mind is combining both these things and showing a ocean on the peak of a mountain, but that may not be real. Or the ocean drying up. You may have seen a pond drying up. You may also have seen ocean. But if these two gets interchanged in our mind, the memories are there. There is also the images are there. So I can imagine the ocean has dried up. But it is not that the ocean would have dried up. It's like that. Next. The mind of the living entity continues to exist in various gross bodies, and according to one's desire for sense gratification, the mind records different thoughts. In the mind, these appear together in different combination. Therefore, these images sometimes appear as things never seen or never heard before. So we have discussed this deeply. So here, how this is fine, Prabhu, let's talk something spiritual, right? Okay. The mind plans material enjoyment, and the gross body serves as the instrument to realize such desires and plans. The mind is the platform onto which all desires come and go. So, okay, boss, how does it relate? How does that change the situation for me spiritually? Srila Narottama Dasa Thakura therefore sings, Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Kuriya Aikya Arana Kariha Mane Asa. We all sing this early in the morning. Narottama Dasa Thakura advises everyone to stick to the principles of carrying out the orders of the spiritual master. One should not desire anything else. If the regulative principles ordered by the spiritual master are followed rigidly, the mind will gradually be trained to desire nothing but the service of Krishna. Such training is the perfection of life. Therefore, the mind is simply going with the experiences that it has had. Now, what experiences do you and I want to give? That is our lesson, right? That is what we are trying to see. Okay, this is the science. Now, how do you use that science for getting benefit? So, engage the mind in Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya. Take his words as the order of our life. And whatever he's coming out of his mouth should be our goal. Like Prabhupada did that. He took the order of his Guru as his life and soul. And he showed by his own example, how we can transform our journey from this different material bodies into going back into the spiritual body and be in our original constitution. If the regulative principles ordered by the spiritual master are followed rigidly, so the mind will throw away all this unnecessary memory and will keep filling it up with these great memories. And with that consciousness, when I am dying, that mind will automatically think of the of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then we can go back to Godhead. Next. Krishna consciousness means constantly associating with the Supreme Personality of Godhead in such a mental state that the devotee can observe the cosmic manifestation exactly as the Supreme Personality of Godhead does. Such observation is not always possible, but it becomes manifest exactly like the dark planet known as Rahu, which is observed in the presence of the full moon. So, when we are all the time in Krishna consciousness, we get the awakening like how, as I said, I gave some examples how the spiritually elevated personalities are able to see all these things, our past, possibly our futures also. This is example like that. Once we rise to the platform of Krishna consciousness, we tend to know all these things. That has been mentioned. And it is also given this example that this Rahu planet, we can't see it at all. But a Rahu planet can be so-called seen. I mean, we say, right, this eclipse, this lunar eclipse is actually, the shadow of the earth coming on before the moon, and it is covering, and therefore the moon is covering. But as per the Vedic astronomical, there's a planet called Rahu. That planet is so dark, it cannot be seen by the eyes. But when a full moon, that particular day, it comes in front of moon, and therefore we can see that black hole. What covers the moon, as per the Vedic astronomy, it is not a shadow of the earth. It is actually another planet which is coming in that path of our eye between our eye and the moon. And that black object is actually covering that moon. And when it leaves, we are able to see the moon. This is as per the scripture, the Vedic calendar that is written here. And Prabhupada also says, maybe, when the scientists say they went to moon, he says possibly they went to this Rahu planet. As long as there exists the subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, senses, sense objects, and the reactions of the material qualities, the consciousness of false identification and its relative objects and gross body exist as well. It's straightforward, right? As long as there exists the subtle material body composed of intelligence, mind, sense objects, and the reactions of the material qualities, the consciousness of false identifications and its relative object. The false identification is basically the false ego, thinking that I am the body, which includes the mind, intelligence, and false ego. As long as we are connected in this way, we will continue to remain in this material world. That is why the earlier verse where we saw, we need to now transfer this consciousness from this material to spiritual, and slowly and surely our subtle body will come to that state and will be able to act in a state like that. And ultimately, we will be able to go back to Godhead. When the living entity is in deep sleep, when he faints, when there is some great shock on account of severe loss at the time of death, or when the body temperature is very high, the movement of the life air is arrested. At that time, the living entity loses knowledge of identifying the body with the self. We discussed this. I talked about this 107 degrees and all that. This is the verse. Next. When one is a youth, all the 10 senses and the mind are completely visible. However, in the mother's womb or in the boyhood state, the sense organs and the mind remain covered, just as the full moon is covered by the darkness of the dark moon night. So this is like, all these memories are there, but it is covered for us at some point in time. And it is revealed at a later point in time. We can know these examples, right? How do, for example, a bird or a calf does not have any experience, right? As soon as it's born from the womb of the cow, how does it know where to go and suck for the milk? Right? There are so many parts of the cow. It can go and suck on the leg, it can go and suck on either of the forelegs or on the tail. Why it is going and sucking on the udder of the cow? This is where did this knowledge come from? If you really think about it. If you are a calf, you do like that. If you are a bird, they immediately open their mouth when the mother bird comes flying in, and it knows. Where does it know? How does it know? This is the experience in different bodies. Krishna reveals that portion for the survival at that point in time. So that knowledge comes to our visibility. Same thing when we are in the womb or when we are a child, we don't know a lot of things. But we are knowing certain things when we are in the youth. Those senses were not activated at that time, but at the appropriate time, those senses get activated. But it is all there in the subtle mind. It is not that that experience is not there. That's why he said, we use this word now, charvita charvanana. That means chewing the chewed. That means I have been in different bodies enjoying the same things again and again and again and again and again. That is chewing the chewed. But I think, this is something which I have never done, I want to do. No, you have done this in many bodies. When the living entity dreams, the sense object are not actually present. However, because one has associated with the sense objects, they become manifest. Similarly, the living entity with undeveloped senses does not cease to exist materially, even though he may not be exactly in contact with the sense object. It is sometimes said that because a child is innocent, he is completely pure. Actually, this is not the fact. The effects of fruitive activities reserved in the subtle body appears in 3 concurrent stages. So, it talks about that bija, uta, falonmukha, prarabdha, right? This how our actions, whatever we thought, how it goes through different stages, right from the point of being bija, then it becomes, it develops some contact with something, develops the desire, that later fructifies, and then fructify means they are already in action. Fructifying is one thing, that I know I have won some money. That's okay. That is actually fructifying. But then actually enjoying that money is the effect of that fructification, right? Otherwise, what is the point? So that is the next stage. So these things are all happening in our subtle body. Next verse. The 5 sense objects, the 5 sense organs, the 5 knowledge acquiring senses and the mind are the 16 material expansions. These combine with the living entity and are influenced by the 3 modes of material nature. Thus the existence of the conditioned soul is understood. So this is the layer of all this gross body broken up in this 5 knowledge acquiring, all these things, along with the subtle body which includes the mind, and of course the soul. These 3 combine, and on top of it there is this 3 modes of material nature. So depending on what I have desired, which gear that desire can be fulfilled. It can be fulfilled in the gear of Sattva Guna, in the gear of Rajo Guna. That is the next layer which the Lord is putting it. And that gear the Lord engages, and therefore we are able to get that desire. Because if you are in that Sattva mode, you cannot do something which is very passionate. Therefore, that Lord is mercifully putting us in that state of passion, so that that particular desire which I had, which is more requiring passion to achieve, is actually that gear is put for the soul by the Lord, and therefore we are able to be passionate to achieve that desire which I thought in my previous gross body, but in the same subtle body. Next. By virtue of the processes of the subtle body, the living entity develops and gives up gross body. This is known as the transmigration of the soul. Thus, the soul becomes subjected to different types of so-called enjoyment, lamentation, fear, happiness, and unhappiness. Nothing to explain here much. But Prabhupada here also quoting Manmana Mava Bhakto. So, as from a spiritual point, all this knowledge should transfer, make us understand. Therefore, what? Therefore, try to convert our consciousness from this material existence to spiritual existence. The caterpillar transports itself from one leaf to another by capturing one leaf before giving up the other. Similarly, according to his previous work, the living entity must capture another body before giving up the one he has. This is because the mind is the reservoir of all kinds of desires. So we keep traveling from one leaf to another, one body to another. But the continuity there is the subtle body, which is our mind. And of course the intelligence and false ego. Next. As long as we desire to enjoy sense gratification, we create material activities. When the living entity acts in the material field, he enjoys the senses, and while enjoying the senses, he creates another series of material activities. In this way, the living entity becomes entrapped as a conditioned soul. So the sequence of how we keep continuing to get material body is being explained here. And therefore, this is basically what? Karma, right? Karma. But what are we supposed to therefore do is, as soul, we cannot remain silent. We need to be doing something or the other. And every time I do something, I am getting reaction for that. That is science, no? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Therefore, how can we be without doing any activity? So the Mayavadis say simply sit without doing anything. You give up all desire, which is not practically possible. Therefore, practical way is engage in activities, but do not associate that with your senses, but associate that with the senses of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is called akarma. So as long as we are doing akarma, you are doing activity, but that result is not coming to you, that is not affecting your subtle body's consciousness. It is actually having a positive impact on the subtle body's consciousness, and you are not generating the next body. So right now, this whatever 1 minute of time hours we are using, we are not generating any karma. Otherwise, we would have been generating like another one full life karma we would have generated in this 1.5 hours. But right now we are suspended in time. In terms of the karma generation, we are not generating any karma. We are actually on the other side, we are actually generating our spiritual body. Means we're not generating because that is already there. But we are getting more realization of that spiritual body. So one day finally the full body will get revealed to us. As we continue to be in this akarma state. So that is important. Next. You should always know that this cosmic manifestation is created, maintained and annihilated by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, everything within this cosmic manifestation is under the control of the Lord. To be enlightened by this perfect knowledge, one should always engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. So ultimately, once you understand all these things, therefore what? Why am I stuck in this subtle body? And how will I get rid of that? So this is the question is, one need to understand beyond this material creation, there is this spiritual world. And there the Supreme Personality of Godhead is there, and He is the one who is controlling both the spiritual and material world. So whatever my situation is, what my gross body is imagining or experiencing, everything is on account of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. And He is in perfect control. Now, this is knowledge. If you know that, then we should see then what am I doing here in this illusory condition. I need to actually go to that person with whom I have that real relationship. And how do I do that? In this body, in this grass body right now, in this subtle body, I can't just jump into the, Goloka Vrindavan or any of the Vaikuntha planets, right? Not possible. So I need to prepare. I need to prepare for that examination. I take that examination, get my visa and go back there. And for that, to be enlightened by this perfect knowledge, one should engage himself in the devotional service of the Lord. Only way is to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. Do whatever 9 processes of devotional service, whatever you can do. That is what is being said here. Coming to the end now. The great sage Maitreya continued, the supreme devotee, the great saint Narada, thus explained to King Prachina Barhi the constitutional position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. After giving an invitation to the king, Narada Muni left to return to Siddhaloka. So he explained the constitutional position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. So we have understood, right? This living entity is a part and parcel, but because of the thinking itself to be the Lord of everything that be, he is made it, or mercifully the Lord had said, okay, you think you are that, think like that and be in another place. But we are actually part and parcel of the Lord. So the idea is, how do we go and connect back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So he is now saying, now I have explained everything to you. Now you need to start working on this and go back to Godhead. Here is the invitation. He's after giving an invitation to the king, Narada Muni left to return to Siddhaloka. The last one. In the presence of his ministers, the saintly king Prachina Barhi left orders for his sons to protect the citizens. He then left home and went off to undergo austerities in a holy place known as Kapilashrama. So, this is application of the theoretical knowledge that we receive. So, science means using that knowledge for getting some benefit. So, here this is science for Prachina Barhi. For us, possibly, when I'm saying for me, I can hear all these things, but I go back into my material life. Therefore, that is not science in my mind, right? But actually, this is pure science. Science means there is some knowledge which you can apply to get some result. So, this is perfectly what here Prachina Barhi is doing. After getting enlightened by Narada Muni, he is giving orders to his ministers to his son, saying that you now need to take over and do this, take care of this kingdom. So we started off this chapter possibly when his sons all actually were away at this point in time. They got the blessings of Lord Shiva. So they are getting instructions from Lord Shiva for a long time. At that time Narada Muni comes and says, the sons are all getting it, the father is sitting like this, pious man, so let me go and give him mercy. That's how Narada Muni came here. Therefore, now he is saying, okay, when they come back, you please hand over the kingdom, let them take care of this thing. I am now going towards self-realization. So he goes to this Kapilashrama and starts applying, practicalizing what Narada Muni told him, trying to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Manmana Bhavavat Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. All that he is going to do now. And in the process, he will certainly go back because he already has the visa. He's right, he's got the invitation from Narada Muni. So we all are also getting that invitation from Srila Prabhupada, right? We already got it. We just have to now do some preparation and go to that country, right? Just like how we go to another country, you have to go to America. Okay, what is the weather? What I need to, what dress I need to wear there? What are the things that I should carry? What are the rules and regulations of America? Can I drive in America? In which side of the road I should drive? We plan everything, no? So now our knowing is now I am not the body, I am the soul, I am going to Vaikuntha Loka or Goloka, not even Vaikuntha, we are all going to Goloka Vrindavana. That is what Prabhupada wants us to do. So how it is in Goloka? There are actually sincerely people try to train themselves to herd cows. See, if you are serious, you should learn, okay, how do I milk cows, because there you have to do these things now. So that is the application of this knowledge. So how to be, in spiritual world, how to be always Manmana Bhavavat Bhakto. So these things we need to start applying now, doing now. So when we go there, it's natural. Next, having undergone austerities and penances at Kapilashrama, King Prachina Bharri attained full liberation from all material designations. He constantly engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord and attained a spiritual position qualitatively equal to that of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is what I just now said. You go back there and you are in constant relationship with that Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we become like God, but we are not God. Qualitatively, we become one with Him. That means in thought, we become one with Him, not in action. He can do things which even Narada Muni somewhere is actually explaining. See, myself, he talks about the Mahajanas. He talks about Lord Shiva, myself, Yama. He talks about all the Mahajanas. And he says, we all know about Krishna. Then he says, but we also don't know everything about Krishna. So it is Narada Muni's words. That means Krishna is unlimited. We are very, very finite. But we are qualitatively one with Krishna. But right now we are covered. But when we are in our true consciousness, once we understand all these things, apply it, and then we are able to go back to the spiritual world, we will be in that state of bliss and joy because we are in relation with Krishna. So that is important. I think that's it. My dear Vidhura, one who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence as described by the great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. So this is what is the benefit of us going through this chapters, last 2 chapters possibly, over the last 4 or 5 weeks. We are now becoming eligible to get liberation. Of course, we need to now act on it. We can be liberated from the bodily conception of life. That means we can take up to devotional life. Of course, naturally, which means we can go back to Godhead if we take it seriously. One who hears this narration concerning the understanding of the living entity's spiritual existence as described by the great sage Narada, or who relates it to others, will be liberated from the bodily conception of life. The narration spoken by the great sage Narada is full of transcendental fame of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, this narration, when described, certainly sanctifies this material world. So today, or rather the last few weeks, we have been sanctifying this material world. Not only ourselves, but the entire environment around us. It purifies the heart of the living entity and helps him attain his spiritual identity. One who relates this transcendental narration will be liberated from all material bondage and will no longer have to wander within this material world. Hare Krishna. So we are all blessed. Last one. The allegory of King Puranjana, described herein according to authority, was heard by me from my spiritual master, and it is full of spiritual knowledge. If one can understand the purpose of this allegory, he will certainly be relieved from the bodily conception and will certainly understand life after death. Although one may not understand what transmigration of the soul actually is, one can actually understand it by studying this narration. So we may not have this by experience, but by understanding it from Srila Prabhupada, we are coming to this state. So this ends this particular chapter. I end here. I'm sorry again, it is a long time. I don't know, 6:45 to 7:45, 8:15. So 1.5 hours plus. I'm sorry. Hare Krishna. If there are any comments, questions, welcome.